Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Findable webinar on how asset managers answer lease questions in seconds. My name is Paul, and I'll be the host for the webinar today.
So I want to start with a real customer story. I was speaking recently with the innovation lead at one of the UK's largest commercial real estate investment trusts. It's a FTSE 100 name, trophy assets, more than 2,000 commercial leases, but for obvious reasons we'll keep them anonymous, but the numbers are real. They were rolling out an electric vehicle charging installation across the portfolio, and that was driven by tenant demand, ESG commitments. So all in, a straightforward decision for 2026, right? Until legal raised the hand internally, because buried in their 20-year leases are commitments like the landlord guarantees no fewer than 10,000 parking spaces shall be available at any time. So the moment you designate a parking bay as an electric vehicle charging point, it stops counting as a regular parking space. So install a charger in the wrong place and you're in material breach of your lease contract. So the question became, out of the 2,000 plus leases that they were managing, how many contain car parking clauses that a charger installation could potentially breach? Now, they try to answer that question with Copilot first, which, in all fairness, is a sensible instinct. They're on Microsoft, all their data sits in SharePoint, so it was a natural next step to go in and see if they can could pull that information out using the tools available to them. And Copilot said that the answer was around 300 leases had those clauses. Now, the real number was actually over 900. Had they acted on the Copilot answer, they would have been in material breach across hundreds of leases they didn't even know about. So what did they do next? They briefed a major law firm and had associates read every lease one at a time. It took over a month to go through the leases that they had in their portfolio, and it cost them roughly £50,000 for that exercise. And the interesting part is that a lot of that money wasn't really the reading, it was the professional indemnity that the law firm provided. Basically saying, if we got it wrong, we carry the liability. Now, the part that stuck with us while we were talking is that they're running the same exercise right now across the retail portfolio because of a regulatory change on upward only rent reviews. So, same process, same number of leases, same law firm still ongoing, just a different data point and a different query, right? So what that tells us is that it's not a £50,000 problem. It's a £50,000 problem that happens again and again and again, because the need changes, but the underlying foundational issue with not being able to find information quickly and query at scale when it matters with efficiency and speed is producing a big business overhead for them. Now, the point isn't that AI should replace lawyers, right? Absolutely not. The point is that this landlord should have walked into the law firm already holding the answers from their lease documents and paid the law firm to validate the answers rather than discover them in the first place for them. And that's a completely different commercial conversation. So what I would like to show you today is one of the ways of how you could answer similar lease type questions across your portfolio of the assets that you manage, and save yourselves some cost in the process and quite a lot of people time, frankly, right? Especially if your data sits across multiple places or isn't very well structured at this particular point in time. So now what I would like to do is just to show you a practical example of how we could assist lease data extraction at scale, and to make your life easier, essentially, when you're looking to make portfolio level decisions. And this won't be focused on AI, but rather focused on building trust, being specific about what your documents contain, and giving you tools, essentially, to present information for decision making at scale and speed. So give me 1 second. Now, a lot of our customers are dealing with lease data on a daily basis, right? From specific tenants to specific assets, all the way through to transactions and rent reviews and lease renewals. So this is very much a common problem that that affects multiple teams and multiple individuals at any given time. The EV parking space example I gave was maybe on the sort of higher scale, not as often, a major project that runs through the business, but there's ultimately many, many small events that do require people to be able to answer questions about what's in the lease, look at specific clauses, pull out specific information at a moment's notice rather than emailing someone or searching on SharePoint or waiting for someone to produce that answer. So without getting too technical, I'll show you how Findable would address this and how you would be able to query your leases at scale. So we've built a tool essentially that allows you to be flexible with what you want to pull out of your documents. Now, given we're talking specifically about leases, there's multiple common things that come across, and I'll show you a finished lease data extraction to illustrate the point. Now, what you can see here is a table that we've built to basically allow you to quickly pull out specific data points out of your leases. So usual suspects such as, what is the landlord name, the tenant name, premises address, floor area, permitted use, etc. But where it gets a lot more powerful is if you start looking at specific clauses or instances of data that matter for your business. What we see a lot of across our customer group is that they do have some sort of structure or templates or sort of best practice examples of how they manage and store lease data on their system. But the moment a new data point needs to be validated or extracted or confirmed, there doesn't seem to be a process to do so outside of manually going through each lease document and finding that information, copying it out of the document and putting it somewhere for them to then use. And as you can imagine, that's a largely manual process that carries quite a big time and resource cost, especially at scale when we're talking hundreds or thousands of leases. Now, in this example, what we're able to do is basically pull out any data point at scale. So you could dump 300 leases into this, and you could say, look, I want you to extract all of these different data points at the top. You can add anything, to be honest, that you care about. And then all you need to do is basically click run an extraction. So I'll show you just a quick example of how we can add a different data point and get this done. So for example, I want to know upwards rent review. I want it to be a simple yes and no. So basically what you're doing here is describing, this is what I want you to extract from my lease document. You can give it a description. You can select what you want it to be, text, currency, numeric. You can look for verbatim, so the exact matches in your lease documents. But for the purpose of this, I just want to know, is this lease an upwards only rent review? Yes or no? I'll create a data point. Now that's edited here on the right-hand side. And all I need to do is basically just say, look, I just want this new data point extracted across all my leases now. So what Findable will do essentially is, and you can see the progress at the top, is going to go through these 19 lease documents that we have on the platform here for this specific asset. And it's going to look for the specific data point that we just added to this data set. So it's not starting the whole process over. It's basically just giving you the additional information you asked for at this point in time. Now, obviously, if you added additional documents, it would go for all of these and pull them out for you. So you can see now it's starting to find what we asked it to do, and it's now listing that information for us on the right-hand side. So let's just give it a second to populate. So you can see a sort of real-time example on real documents of the sort of the speed and efficiency with which we can confirm these sort of details. Now, as you can imagine, if you were looking to read these 19 documents or put them into ChatGPT or Claude or somewhere else, it would probably take you much longer to get these answers, and then you would have to copy them across out of there somewhere else. But now if I want to check this, I can click on the specific data point, and I can see, okay, the confidence score is high, because the document explicitly states that the rent review basis is upwards only. And it does say this is exactly where it found it. So really what we're looking to provide you with is a full audit trail, not just of the information and the confidence that information is correct, but also exactly where in the lease document it found that information. So what we could do now is we could obviously click into the document. It's gonna basically tell us where that information was, and it says upwards only, open market rent at 5th anniversary. So if anything, gives you peace of mind that this is actually coming from your lease documents. And this is applicable to scanned leases. This is applicable to most handwritten instances. You could even have a field that says, check if this lease is signed, yes or no. It's able to recognize visual signatures in your documents, multiple sort of cases that you can use this for to drive faster decisions across your leasing portfolio, if anything. Now, what I could also do is I could export all of these data points into an Excel or a CSV or a JSON file, and I can plug it into any other platform, or I can use my own AI tools then to work further with these data points. But what we're not doing is we're not reading each individual lease and trying to understand where their information is. So realistically, 20 documents, about 10 data points, you could run this, go make yourself a cup of coffee, and by the time you come back, this extraction would have finished. Samuel, are there any leases that the system optical character recognition has trouble with? For example, pre-1950 leases. That's a great question, Samuel. So in honesty, the quality of the actual lease does matter. So if it was, a rescan of a scan of another scan, and the quality was really, really poor, no AI and no OCR capability would be able to read it for you. But as long as the actual quality of the document is reasonable, so say it's an original in a well-scanned quality copy, then the system would have no trouble whatsoever. The easiest way to think about it is if you could read it and understand it, then Findable as a tool will have no issues whatsoever doing the same. That's probably the best comparison I can give it. Does that answer your question? Now, obviously, we're talking leases here because this is the topic of the webinar, but as all of you understand, this can be used for contract review. This could be used for vendor review, any type of document you can put in here. Define what data you want summarized or pulled out or identified within those documents. And then you just run an extraction. It's really, really simple to set it up. And then once you do, you can save it as a template so that your colleagues can use it, or you can just come back to it and edit it at a different data point. So, for example, if legislation changes, or if one of your investors or funders comes to you and says, which of our leases across the portfolio have X clause in them or mention this or that, it's as simple as just adding a different data point because you already have your leases, and then you just run an extraction. Takes a matter of minutes rather than days or weeks, and you don't have to rely on a third party or wait or delay the answer, essentially. A question from Eric: does it read DWG vector files with text and a drawing? In short, Eric, it does. It absolutely does, but that's a slightly different feature from what you're seeing on the screen. But we do ingest drawings, we classify them, we extract metadata from them, and any type of note, annotation, or text within an actual drawing file is then accessible, searchable, and queryable with the use of the tool as well. So if you wanted to put drawings in here and, for example, ask, does the drawing contain X, or pull out a specific piece of information from these 300 drawings, it would have no issues doing that for you. And I'm thinking here it could be floor, level, title, whatever you want to choose, essentially. A question from Valdes: where does the actual data, where is the actual data stored, and does this integrate with other document solutions or data hosting instances via an API? The simple answer is yes, Valdez. We're open API, so at the moment we have a live link into SharePoint and a couple of other solutions. But no problem whatsoever to push or pull data from any third-party solution as long as it warrants, as long as you need it. And the data itself, if we're connecting to SharePoint, we're mirroring your own information in Findable so you can work with it. If you don't have a data storage solution that we API to, you can just simply put all the documents manually into Findable, which is a zip file, drag and drop, and then we'll extract it, process it, classify it, and you'll be able to work with leases and other document types very, very easily and quickly. So via an API, we essentially pull the documents and make a copy and OCR them. So your SharePoint documentation doesn't actually leave, but we do make a copy. It is GDPR compliant, and we're also ISO compliant and SOC 2 compliant. So if cybersecurity was an issue, more than happy to address in a follow-up. But we do have some very good SharePoint connection case studies, if that was of interest to anyone on this call. Samuel is asking, can the final data be exported as a spreadsheet? It's a very good question, Samuel. So yes, you can export it into a CSV file, which is essentially an Excel file. I guess it's a question of, does the reasoning export into the Excel spreadsheet? If it's a yes or no, you want the reasoning there as well, I take it. I would be inclined to say yes, but I would need to confirm. So Valdez, in terms of where we mirror, so we use AWS as a cloud partner to store information. So any information that actually sits on Findable, whether that's pulled by an API or uploaded directly into the solution, is on AWS, and all the locations are in Europe. Yeah, so Frankfurt and Sweden, and any tools that we connect to, we use European endpoints. So none of the information it's essentially zero data retention as far as the AI models are concerned. And in terms of data storage, AWS with encryption and in transit. So we will process your information, but once the processing is finished, none of that data is retained or stored or otherwise shared with anyone. Works really well with lease contracts. It also works with any type of real estate documentation. So often our clients ask us, why use Findable instead of, say, Copilot or something else? And really the answer is Findable is trained on over 5 million pages of real estate documentation to date over the last 6 years in multiple European languages. So from Norwegian to Danish to English to Italian, German, Lithuanian. We have clients and examples in a lot of the European countries. So what we find is, European portfolios have no issues. You can ask questions in natural language and get answers, or you can extract data from any language document, to be fair, into the table. Construction contracts would be fine, drawings would be fine, operations and maintenance manuals, technical data sheets, commissioning certificates, no issues whatsoever. At the end of the day, these are just documents, right, with data in them. And because of how we process that data, it's almost as if a human was looking at the page, understanding the context and the content. So it's not a keyword search, it's an actual content analysis that provides the answers to your queries. We're not just looking for keyword matches, so to speak. Any other questions from anyone in the audience? In that case, I'd like to run the final poll, and this is simply to ask you, if you would like a follow-up on the back of this webinar. So I'll publish it now, and if you could let us know whether you're interested in having a conversation or referring someone else in your organization to have a chat with us, feel free to do so. Normally, the way we do this is we'll take a small sample of your own documents and run an example to show you exactly how it works with real data that you understand and work with really well. And that usually tends to prove the point very quickly with minimal risk and setup cost from your side. So if anyone on the call is interested test Findable with your own documents, or sort of have a personalized demo, feel free to reach out. If not, we'll send a recording of the webinar after this, so you have a reference point. We'll also share just a quick pager on what we discussed. And like I said, feel free to reach out if you'd like to see it working with your own documents or had any follow-up questions. How many managing agents have we spoken to? Rochelle, that's a very good question. I think I can answer this on the UK side specifically. I think we've spoken to all of the major players in the market, and a lot of them are our customers, so the likes of JLL, Colliers, Knight Frank, Savills we already work with, and several other smaller entities as well. So for anyone looking for sort of customer reference stories, or just a bit of social proof, who else is using this, what results have they seen, feel free to reach out. No strings attached. Happy to point you into someone who's already using Findable. Appreciate all of you taking 30 minutes of your morning to jump on this today. Hope to speak to some of you after this, and like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to show you Findable and what it can do with your own data. Until the next one, thank you.